So the QUT is our new space, and it's actually one of the world's largest public digital interactive environments currently, although I'm sure there'll be some more coming along soon. So I just really wanted to talk about that space, as we're starting a residency there with Ars Electronica that'll kick off next year. At the moment, as Johanna said, we actually have a bunch of students here as well, so that's fabulous that we've started to kind of create that relationship. So first up, what is this thing called the QUT? So really, the QUT is a large environment. It spans over 2 stories. It's got 6 display zones, and each zone is approximately 10 meters long. The interface is 48 high-definition optical-based panels, and it can deal with unlimited touch events within those spaces. It's also compatible with a lot of different touch protocols. There are 18 high-definition Panasonic projectors in the space. There's audio set up on every zone, and there's also motion tracking and near-field sensor systems capable in all of those display environments. Behind those screens are 35 high-end graphics computer workstations. We have web, application, multi-user and database servers. We've actually got a dedicated fiber optic running into our university central network as well. And the QUT supports Windows and Linux platforms. So we're trying to offer a really wide degree of flexibility in what you can do with this space. The QUT also has a dedicated production team and a development space. But actually, it's not just about the bones, or the bones are the least of what this really is as an interesting space. You probably are wondering, how on earth did a university come about to end up with something like this? And that's an interesting and winding story in its own right. So really the story so far, in its first kind of conceptual incarnation, this was going to be a large data visualization space for researchers with IP-sensitive research. However, as the building that it was actually designed to go into became more evident, it became obvious that the QUT was actually situated at the front door of a glass building and really wasn't going to suit IP-sensitive research that well. At that point, it turned up at the door of QUT Precincts, which is where I work. And QUT Precincts are a public-facing department within QUT, so we're really about engagement of the community. And QUT is quite unusual in that extent, because it really invests in the idea that it's a university for and of the community that it's in, rather than just being in and of itself. That's reflected in the architecture, as well as actually having a team that I work in, which is QUT. So when it first came to QUT, it was sort of, there was a team, and they said, well, Lubi, given that you've been running a digital media program for the last 7 years, you're probably best placed to take on this challenge. So when I took on the challenge, I started thinking about, what might this QUT be? And how does it support the intentions of the building that it's actually living in? As with all large communities, there are many different intentions. And there are really, for us at QUT, you can slice those into the inward-facing intentions and the outward-facing intentions. So some of those inward-facing intentions from the science and engineering faculty that are actually teaching out of this space were really about increasing and retaining students who were interested in STEM courses, and actually gathering those students from a wider, diverse kind of interest field. It was also about creating a transparent pathways for these students from undergrad to post and into research. It was also about increasing the postgrad and the research community through an institute called the Institute of Future Environments, and developing a cross-discipline research culture within that. So my role, of course, is to take these aspirations into account, but also to invite, identify what maybe the public and the outward-facing opportunities might be. So I started looking at the QUT and at the building that the QUT lived in, and it seemed to me that there was a real whole bunch of really important outward-facing opportunities, and that actually, potentially, there may be an opportunity for a bit of cultural shift. So I started to think about, well, actually, this space is about engaging with a diverse audience. It's about offering new learning experiences. It's about supporting different types of combinations of collaboration, seeking new pathways to thinking and creating this idea of innovation. Really kind of, for us, moving from the traditional sort of STEM idea of convergent thinking and that idea of cross-discipline teams into a distributed intelligence framework, which is really about transdisciplinary and beyond. So really, whether QUT kind of intentionally did this, which I suspect not, QUT has got itself into the business of something called STEAM. And I've got myself into the business of culture changing within our community at QUT. Now, I'm pretty sure that I'm actually talking to a bunch of people that even know what this acronym means, but just in case you don't, STEAM means science, tech, engineering, art and maths. And what STEAM sort of, is really about is encapsulated well in this quote from Rhode Island, which is that the goal is to foster the true innovation that comes from combining the mind of a scientist and technologist with those of artists or designers. So STEAM is really about meeting of the minds and creating kind of whole-of-brain teams. This comes from the Harvard, Business School in the 90s when they were talking about innovation in business. So as I was saying, we've been around for a little bit, and I thought I'd better show you how we'd actually started to cook with STEAM. So for the QUT to sort of really support those identified intentions that we were talking about, it needed to be thought about not just as that amazing digital display object, but really as a conceptual hub for this idea of STEAM. And that, how we can actually engage with this idea. And we've been doing that through public programs, events, workshops, and actually starting to moving into a new generation of digital projects. We've been around for 7 months now, so we turned everything on at the beginning of the year, which was a minor miracle that it worked, but it did. And really through these last 7 months, we've been looking at some of those ingredients that are making up our cooking pot. So we've been working through something called Talking Robots, QUT Bytes, QUT Kids, STEAM Stream, Collaborators, and Urban, as well as developing a key partnership with Lego Education. So STEAM is underpinning all of our offerings. So it's all about engagement of a wider demographic. It's about self-directed discovery. It's about intergenerational learning and sharing. It's about new collaborations. And these things have really been supported by some awesome Megatronic tools and also amazing partnerships. And we've been busy seeking in our local community, the brains bank to actually deliver this stuff, but not just deliver, but develop and deliver within the STEAM ethos. So we've actually been working with the people that have the know-how to actually kind of get into a STEAM way of thinking. At the same time, we do have that big display environment, and at a slower pace, we've been working on the digital projects. But the pace really hasn't been slower because it's just been all behind the screens for the last 7 months. We've just been birthing this pretty big baby. But we're actually now starting to move into thinking about the next generation of projects and learning from a lot from our launch projects. And the kind of things that have really come to light when you start functioning in this sort of space and scale is that public interaction with digital at scale in a public situation has a whole bunch of interesting and new ideas. And the importance of easy entry points into the projects has become so kind of priority now. And what is effective visual language within this context? And also in identifying the many different audiences that actually come up to engage, but engage at different levels and for different reasons, and how do we facilitate that in a public space? So some of my questions over the sort of developing over these past 6 months have really been about how do I actually support developers to think in a different way? Because they've obviously come from a canon of knowledge to be able to work in this space, but we're asking them to reconceptualize how they work or the space that they work in. What are the content generation, the community building, and the meaningful engagement possibilities that, digital projects in this context could probably offer? What types of user interaction and visual language is required for actually a successful engagement? And how do projects facilitate self-directed discovery and spontaneous collaboration without anyone being there to support that process? As in someone who's trained, such as a museum person waiting a gallery. Like, we don't have people sitting there waiting to explain things to you. It's about you finding that out for yourself. So how do we support that and let that happen? So the Cube really is this kind of digital at scale and in the public domain. So a couple of tactics that are underway is, first up, find the tribe and share the love. So we've been seeking important relationships, and we have a great one with Ars Electronica, and we have this very active knowledge exchange going on and a meaningful collaboration. They're nearly with us every other month at the moment, and yes, we're in Australia, and Austria's a little way away, so they've been doing a lot of jet-lagged sessions with us. Also, really importantly, is open the door to others. So we've been looking at ways of doing that through a production residency stream, and actually sort of really going, okay, so why don't we open those doors to people and creatives who currently QUT hadn't actually thought might want to be engaged, or that they might not want them to be engaged with the Cube because they've got a quite clear idea about this being about science and tech and engineering and maths, and don't realise that actually it's creativity that helps bring in innovation and new ways of working with the space. Sorry, I'm just going to hit back one if I can. So we have our first Australian co-funded digital residency. It's a writer's residency, and it's up and running. And that's with Christy Dina, who's in the top corner with her tribe. And obviously in the coming months, we're working with Ars Electronica to invite our first international resident to the space. As a public-facing team, it's really important to ask the question, Is there any public interest? And we can talk about, you know, among ourselves about the importance of changing culture and opening the doors to wider communities, and isn't it really important that we're doing STEAM? However, you know, we have to be careful that we're not just navel-gazing and talking to ourselves. We had our answer a couple of weeks ago when literally droves of people came to our Robotronica Day, and we had over 10,000 people descend upon QUT for this one day. So the response, though a surprise in the sheer numbers, was also backed up by actually what's been happening in the last 7 months, which is we've had really high participation levels and great interest and with students coming through our schools education program, as well as our public program. And it's been great that actually that sort of interest that's been at a program level really transpired into Robotronica. I have to say though, and this was kind of a phrase that was said a lot on the day, was holy heck, we're really onto something, and that people are really interested in this space. And we need to respond as a university in a really meaningful way. And to me that means making a STEAM hub at a university. Now that probably sounds, well, you know, that's completely within the sort of, you know, pedagogy of what's going on. But actually, you know, we're still at a space where, or in our university, a space where we're still working through that. We still talk about interdisciplinary rather than transdisciplinary. So for us at QUT, STEAM really requires a change of culture. It requires our kind of convergent tradition and our divergent creative tradition to actually kind of reach beyond that, to go past our discipline norms and our thinking systems and really seek this idea of distributed intelligence framework, and to actively build bridges to new ways of thinking, communicating and working. So distributed intelligence is a collective endeavour where individuals, their goals and the tools available to make up the systems of cognition. And actually, you know, that's something that we have to really start working on, and we're doing that with our undergrads through the academy. Really, STEAM goes beyond a delivery point. It's not just us developing workshops and putting them out there into the world. It actually has to become an embedded attitude and a culture of the host community. So this is where that kind of, you know, find the tribe, share the love, and open the doors to others is really coming into play with the Cube. And in these early days, I believe that this is when we can take some large steps, though scary, and everybody needs to kind of occasionally take a bit of a breath. But it is through, at this point, it's through the participation of smart creative folk coming and playing and creating and working with our STEAM or our STEM friends at the moment, that bridges and pathways to new types of collaboration, thinking and discovery will actually be paved. It's early days. We're starting our first residency with Ars next year, so we will be back this time next year, so we'll be able to keep you posted on how this is all going. And thank you very much for your time.